What's up? All right, Dad. So let's just whittle and hang out.
Okay.
That's all this is. So yeah. So what are we looking at here? What are we carving?
Well, we're trying to carve some mallards.
Okay.
And we've already cut it out rough. So we just want to get some of the chips of the wood away from to get us just a general shape, and then we can refine it as we go.
So why do you like carving? What's your favorite part about it?
I guess it's tradition, because my dad did it, and my oldest brother did it, and friends of ours did it, and it was just really neat that we kind of passed this down, as we go.
So when did your dad start carving? Did he just carve his whole life?
Yeah, he carved his whole life, and I guess in those days it was just common for people to walk around with pocket knives, and a lot of folks walk around with pocket knives nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And but still back then you were always using a pocket knife for your everyday life, and so they were always whittling and carving. And so the decoys that they had, they didn't buy. It wasn't plastic decoys or decoys that you could buy, for the store stuff. So they carved their own.
And what kind of wood did they use? It was cypress root, right?
Right. They used cypress root down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, at least southeast Louisiana, because it was readily available, and it's a good carving wood.
It's soft and
yes,
it's
soft.
Floatable, right? It's really
right.
floatable, so it's not like.
And so whenever a cypress tree would turn over and it exposed all the roots, then it was there for a long time and it would dry out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would just cut it off with with saws and stuff, and then carve decoys. But they used everything. I was talking with my brother, and he knew a guy who was making decoys out of pine.
Really?
Pine 2x4s.
Oh God, that's gonna be kind of hard to carve.
Because it was hard to carve, and he was carving rough divers, but he made 50 of them to put out in Lake Pontchartrain to hunt with.
Oh my God.
And so it was pretty much what you had at hand too, but the preferred wood was cypress. And one of my favorite stories about my dad was him and my uncle, or my godfather, Bob Ollier. He wasn't related to us, but he was just my godfather.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of him yet.
Right. And so him and my dad were best friends, and they were best friends all the way till they died. And they were going to meet up at this location to duck hunt.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they spent the whole summer carving decoys by the fireplace, and just like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then they had a tub, and they would test float them, and then they painted them and everything like that. And they had a whole sack of them that they fixed up, to go duck hunting. Well, in Louisiana, it doesn't get cold very often, but it just so happens it was one of those days where it was really cold.
Oh, yeah?
It was probably low 30s, maybe 20s.
Okay, sure.
And so they weren't used to that kind of cold.
No, I bet not.
So my dad was at the hunting spot first with this pirogue, which is a flat bottom canoe.
Yep.
And so he was there first, and he was waiting for my uncle to show, okay?
Okay, Bob.
Bob, before he put the decoys out. Well, he kept getting colder and colder. So he was looking for any kind of dry wood to start a fire, because they all smoked, okay? So every one of them smoked cigarettes, and they probably started smoking it at age 12 or 13,
Sure. Well, back then they didn't know it was bad for you.
Right. So So he was looking for a piece of dry wood to burn to start a fire because he said he had ice all over his pants while he was paddling the boat.
Not used to that.
So he was wet and he wasn't used to it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so he kept looking. He said he could not find a dry piece of wood to save his soul.
Oh, shit.
So the first thing he did was he grabbed one of the decoys.
Oh, no!
So he said he put a match to it, and he says, man, he says, with that fresh paint that was on it dried out well and everything like that, he says, man, it took off. He says, that thing burned just like a Yule log, you know?
Oh, my God. Bet that paint wasn't too good to inhale either.
So he burned the first one, and he saw how good it burned, so he threw another one on.
Oh, shit. Oh,
by the time my uncle got there to meet him, they were gone.
No.
And my uncle was really pissed off, he says, because he didn't even save, the big laugh was, he didn't even save me any coals or anything to stand next to. So he burned a whole sack of decoys.
Well, I know you and Mr. Jim are more used to the cold when y'all go hunting for ducks. You guys go even when it's cold, yeah?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I mean, I remember the duck pond.
Freezing over.
Yeah.
Because the one hunt that we had, one of the hunts we had, I had, the pond was just about froze over with about an inch of ice. Mm-hmm. And so the ducks needed a place to land. Mm-hmm. So I took the pirogue and went out there and I broke it all up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then we put our decoys out, and that was probably the best mallard hunt we had. Because the ducks were looking for a place to land. They were looking for water.
Yeah.
And so this gave them some open water to land in.
So what was your first hunt like as a kid?
Let's see.
Do you remember?
My first duck hunt.
Well, your nickname was Duck.
Well, that was at
Aaron.
School. Right. No.
Didn't he call? Because he'd always call and do the aga on the phone, right?
Right, and that's a goose call.
Because wasn't he goose and you were duck?
No, he wasn't goose, but
where was that from?
He was AP.
And you were DP.
I was DP, but then at an early age, the kids at school, because I was so crazy about duck hunting, made fun of me and they called me Duck.
Little duck.
And so it kind of stuck. And because that's all I talked about. If you opened my brain up back then, little ducks would fly out of it.
I think you still have that problem.
You know, I probably still have that problem also.
Oh, and it really, I think it started with George. Don't you?
No, I had George when I was still, I'd already been hunting when I had George. And George was my pet duck.
You want to tell the story of George?
Yeah,
I think you should tell it.
You guys, if you want to make everybody cry, we can do that.
I think that's a good story. I think that's a real story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, all of these are true to life, real stories.
Yeah, of course.
There's no lies here.
No fabrications.
No fabrications. The truth may get a little blended with the years. It's either softened or harshened either way. You know?
Overemphasizing.
Overemphasized, right. So, okay, let's get back to my first duck hunt.
Okay, first duck hunt, then we'll go back to George.
Okay. We can save George because that's going to be a tearjerker to the audience.
Okay.
Okay. My first duck hunt, I remember I was 10 years old.
Okay.
Okay. Because I was a sickly kid. Yes, and so I was in the hospital for my whole 7th year.
Yeah, you didn't even go to school, huh?
I didn't even go to school. Well, I went to school just for a small time.
And that was kidney disease, right?
Right. So I was in the hospital, and then I had asthma as a kid.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so my mother was very protective of me. And so I was the only kid that wasn't hunting between me and my oldest brother and myself. Mm-hmm. My sister didn't hunt. So they were going to take me hunting for the first time. Mm-hmm. Well, my mother had a fit. Okay, she did not want me to go.
She was worried about you, huh?
She was worried about me. Because she told him, if he comes home wet or if he comes home sick, pack your stuff.
To your dad?
She told that to my oldest brother.
Oh, to your older brother. Oh, my God.
Because my dad was sickly also.
Oh, so your dad wasn't going on that hunt.
He was not going on that hunt. So it was just my oldest brother, my 2 older brothers, and a friend of ours. And we went to a place called Manchac. Manchac. It was Manchac, Louisiana. And it was a cypress swamp. and it was extremely hard at that time to get through to the spot where you were duck hunting.
Okay.
And it's because we had to get out and drag the boats and walk and push pole and that sort of thing. Push poling is standing up like a gondola and and pushing with a pole, and you had to do that to get the boats through. And the boats were very shallow draft boats, and but we did it, and that was an art in itself. So all I remember is that my oldest brother at that time got me out there, and he drugged the boat and everything like that. I had to get out, and I never really worked at that kind of stuff before in my life, and I was real awkward about everything. And he had given me a shell. It was a crack barrel shotgun.
Okay.
A 410, and
I don't know what that means.
That's a small shotgun.
Okay.
But he wouldn't trust me with the shells.
How come? Thought you'd lose them?
No, because he didn't want me to load the gun at the wrong time.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's gun safety. So he gave me a shell, and I never shot my gun because the ducks were flying in too fast. I didn't know what was going on. And so he really didn't say, okay, shoot, or take them, or anything like that. Yeah, he was busy trying to kill some ducks. And so my first hunt was rather uneventful. But the second hunt we went on was really probably one of the best hunts not the best hunts that I ever went on as far as killing things, but the best hunt as far as family goes.
Okay, how come?
Because it was the only hunt that my 3 brothers and my dad and myself, my 2 brothers, my dad, and myself.
So the 3 brothers, all of you.
The
all
3 of us all.
So that'd be Aaron, Oscar, and then you.
And my dad.
And then Charlie.
Right. So that was the only hunt that we made together.
Oh, you only did one your whole life?
Our whole life.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Okay. Because my dad was like I said, was ill, and so.
What was wrong with your dad?
He had heart trouble, and then he had cancer, and so he was fighting a bunch of things, So we went to Man Shack, and I believe my brother pushed my dad back, and then my brother Aaron and I pushed together.
Oh yeah, so you and Aaron.
So Aaron was a little older than me, so he had a little more skill in that. So he pushed us, and so.
Oh, that's helpful.
The night.
And you were when 11? About 11?
Yeah.
At this point.
Right.
Okay.
So that night, the night before, we realized we didn't have enough guns.
How many guns did y'all have? 2?
No, well, we didn't have enough, or we didn't have the ammunition for one of them.
No.
My brother had a 20 gauge, and so they wanted me to use the 20 gauge, and then my oldest brother had the old crowbar, which we called.
The crowbar? What kind of gun is that?
That was a single shot 12 gauge that was really light, and it knocked the heck out of you with the recoil. So it had an affectionate name called the crowbar. Okay, so my brother Aaron was using the crowbar, and my oldest brother, who had just gotten back from the National Guard.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know
And
so he was in the National Guard.
Yes, he was.
How old was he?
He was in the Air National Guard.
That was Oscar.
That was Oscar. I think he was 21.
Okay.
Okay. Just gotten back from the National Guard, just in time to make the hunt.
Oh, fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he had bought a brand new Browning A5.
Oh.
Nice. A semi-automatic.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So he bought that. So my dad didn't have a gun.
Oh.
Because I got another story about that. But so my dad didn't have a gun. So we went over to my Uncle Wagner's house. Okay. And my Uncle Wagner wasn't a hunter, but he had a self-defense gun, which was a shotgun with a real short barrel.
Just in case.
But it was an old-time side-by-side double barrel with the rabbit ears on it.
I don't know what that looks like even. I'd have to see a picture.
That's the old crack, the ears where you crack them back. Is if you look at a lot of the old muzzle loaders, they had that. So he says, give this one a try, Charlie. And so my dad said, sure, I'll take it. So we were sitting there, and it was daylight come, and a big drake mallard came in, and everybody took a shot at it and missed, including myself. And my dad was the last one, and he picked up with that old double barrel and dropped him right there.
Dang.
And so, man, we all cheered. It was just all kind of a family moment, you know.
Oh, that's nice.
And so we made our hunt. I killed my first duck that day. I was 11, my first duck, and it was a spoonbill, not a very prized duck. It was a shoveler.
What's a spoonbill? Oh, so they're a fish eater, right?
Well, they're
kind of fishy flavor.
They got a real big beak on them, and they shove.
Oh yeah.
It's a real big beak.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was a hen, but to me, it was like killing a 10-point buck, you know.
Oh, at that point, yeah.
Yes, I was so proud of that duck. So anyway, I killed the spoonbill, and then my brother and I killed some coots, and so we came out that afternoon, and the game warden was waiting for us.
What'd y'all do?
So what happened was, it was so thick. We didn't do anything illegal, but it was so thick there, and it was so hard to come out that we didn't come out where our cars were parked.
Oh.
We came out about 100 yards down from where they were parked. So the game warden thought we were trying to get away with something. He thought we had ducks hiding in the bushes. Like we shot over our limit. And so they thoroughly checked us, and they said, "What do you have in that bag?" And my dad said, "Wet sandwiches. Would you like one?" "Let me see your shell bucket." So they took our shell buckets and looked in there. They thought for sure they had us dead right. And then he says, "How is this that you all have the same name, and one of you guys is 11, and you're 56? And my dad says, "You ever consider that this is my 3 boys?" And he says, "Oh, okay." So after extensive search and all of that, they left us alone, and we got in and loaded our stuff up. But that was the only hunt that we all hunted together. That was the only hunt out of all the duck hunting that we did. Now, I did manage to take my dad hunting a couple of times. You know, but it wasn't with Aaron.
All the brothers.
I think Aaron maybe made one hunt with us, but my oldest brother didn't. So.
What was Oscar doing at that point? Because he was a lot older too.
Yes, he got married first, and so he was busy with married stuff, and then he also worked different times than what we did.
Well, he's a baker, right?
Right, and so we just didn't make a lot of hunts together. It was unfortunate. I made more hunts with my brother Aaron.
Yeah.
Than I did with
Uncle
Oscar.
Aaron. Well, I knew Uncle Aaron a lot better than I knew Uncle Oscar.
Right.
And Uncle Oscar's still around, but I didn't ever really get to know him much.
But I made more hunts with him than I did with Oscar. But the thing about it was I really wasn't happy until I could just take myself.
You mean be independent and just do it on your own?
With it, right. And so when I got my truck, there was no holding me back then. And that's
when did you get your truck?
I got my truck when I graduated from high school. I was land surveying. And so I was in my early 20s.
Oh, yeah. That's such a good feeling.
You know, and so then I would go by myself, or I'd go with my friend Don, best friend Don, and then there was no holding back then.
Well, it's nice having that freedom of that first,
Sure.
car and that first kind of adventure as a
Plus,
20-something.
it was another step towards being a man.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know.
Being
But that was
adult.
our only hunt where all of us hunted together, and that was kind of a landmark type time.
Now, tell us about George.
George. Okay.
Now that we're...
George, I had some mallards, and my Uncle Bob.
Okay, that's your dad's best friend who you called
That's
Uncle.
my dad's best friend, Uncle Bob. Had some ruin ducks, which is like a big mallard. Okay, and he didn't want them anymore. So he says, "Here, why don't you take them?" Because I had the pin and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you at this point?
I was 13.
13?
No, I was probably a little older. I would say 15.
Because I thought you always made it sound like you were really young.
I was about 15 or 14, 15, something like that. Anyway, so we had, I had my ducks, and then I was, take care of them every day.
How many did you have?
I probably had 5.
Okay.
Okay. And I would call to them with my duck call,
Mm-hmm.
and they would call back.
That's cute. That's fun.
So, and then I'd make sure that they had their water. I'd drain their pans out and all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, one day, these ruined ducks ate a lot of food.
Okay.
Okay, we were going through a sack of cracked corn every week. And money was tight at my house, because my dad was sick and my mother was working at the school as a cafeteria cook. And so, anyway, he said, we can't keep them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, what we're going to do is, he says, we're going to harvest them. So that meant killing the ducks and we were going to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we already had a lot of money invested in them already with the corn. So I pleaded the case to keep George because George was the big guy and he was my pet.
So how was your relationship with George different than you and the other ducks? What did y'all do? What was that interaction like?
He always came to the cage and came out to the edge, and I could feed him out of my hand, and he was the biggest one, so you could tell he was different than all the other ones.
Yeah, he was special.
He was kind of like the big guy, and so George was one of my pets, and so I was trying to plead the case to let George go to the park. And then I said, I don't care about the other ducks, although I did.
Yeah.
I said, but I was saying, you take the other ducks, and we'll let George loose at City Park. My dad said, we can't do that. We got too much invested in them already.
That's so sad.
And so I went in and talked to my sister, because she could almost talk my dad out about anything, because she got in trouble all the time coming home late and all that kind of stuff, and my dad would kind of intervene in her favor, and he wouldn't work with that either.
And didn't he say if you were a real man, you'd kill him yourself?
No,
That's what you said to me. Don't you lie on camera.
I'm not. Let me tell you what transpired. He said, you could either help us, because these are just ducks, or go inside. But the insinuation was that I wasn't a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the insinuation. And so I was at that age where I was still trying to prove myself as far as being a man. Okay. So I got mad, and I went up there, and I went in the cage, and I grabbed and I wrung George's neck.
And then what happened?
And I threw him on the ground, and then I cried. I left. I went and hid by the lake for the rest of the afternoon, and by myself.
How did that feel? What did you think about?
I didn't know what to think. I was sad. I was just really sad.
Well, it's obvious that you love animals. I mean, I look at the dogs and even the donkeys down the road, you love animals, it's definitely a passion. I think of the chinchilla, Ollie, you really enjoy taking care of things.
And I guess that was the thing, is that I had taken care of him.
Yeah, he wasn't,
they got sick, and I went to my uncle's house, and I said, they're sick.
Let me take care of them.
He gave me some medicine, and then I mixed it with their water, and they got well.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, you have a passion for making things better. Because even Ollie, the chinchilla that we had, he was always sickly, but you'd hand feed him every day. until he died, you know, and he loved you, you know.
But, you know, I mean, I'm really not an animal rights type person. I feel that people should be a good steward to the animals and don't treat them mean or don't treat them bad.
Yeah.
You know, but
no, you care about them.
I care about them. That's just like, you know,
well, you don't hunt unethically either. It's not like you hunt to just kill something and watch it die, right? It's like you're hunting to feed. And
then everything that
yourself.
I hunt, we eat. And everything that we kill, or you know, we eat, and it's a big thing. You know, I take the time in the preparation. I also take the time in cooking. So it's all the way from. The killing is just a small portion of it.
Yeah. Well, I think about, you know, you're a gardener too. You know, I really enjoyed, because I don't eat meat, I really enjoyed when you would do the garden. You know, that was always really nice too. You'd always have a big garden. You have a green thumb too, for growing things.
But you know, back then, times were kind of different. They were harder. But harder to get along. We didn't have I mean, our house was just a one room. I mean, not a one room, but it was pretty much just a small. Our lot was 50 foot wide, so that tells you how wide the house was.
Sure, yeah.
And there was only one room offset, or it would have been a shotgun house. That's where you say if you open the front door, the back door, you can shoot straight through it.
Oh, wow.
That's what's called the shotgun house.
How many rooms were there? Did you stay in the same room as, like, Aaron?
We had a room for the boys.
Okay, so Aaron,
Oscar, and myself was in one room. And then we had a room for my sister, and then my parents had one room.
Oh, wow.
And they were all kind of interconnected. And then we had the kitchen where everything took place. That's where all the discussions took place and everything. That was the spot. That was the meeting room, was the kitchen. The front room was only used for Christmas.
Really?
That's the only place where we put the Christmas tree. And the front room was never used for anything.
That's funny how that works. But where is your house still standing?
Yes, it is.
That's
matter
surprising.
Of fact, the last time I went to Louisiana, they bought out the houses on each side of us and built these large mansions.
Weird.
And then they left that one little house right there.
What's your address?
It was 1437 Choctaw.
Choctaw. I'll have to look it up. Do you have any pictures of your house?
Yes, I do. Yes,
I'd like to see some pictures sometime.
It was a small house, and I remember, to me, when I was a kid, I thought it was the biggest. I thought it was a mansion.
Really?
I thought it was giant. You know, when I was a kid.
Isn't that funny?
And then, as I got older, when I was turned 18 and got my draft card, I remember waking up the next day and I had white all over the side of me. Because that's where I was leaning into the house, walking from there after I'd been out all night.
Oh no! Oh jeez. But now where is the house? It's not in New Orleans proper, is it?
No, it's in Metairie.
Metairie, right?
Metairie, Louisiana.
So
yeah, I went to this film class. It was one of the electives there at school, and we had to do our own project. You know, and then we had to do a team project. I was always better at my own projects than team because I didn't like
other people telling you what to do.
Well, that was probably
that's still how you are.
That's right. I'm right, damn it. So I always thought I could do things better than the whole group, you know. And so anyway, so I made this film, and it was the ducks loading themselves up into the boat to go hunting, and it was the fishing lures loading themselves up in the tackle box to go fishing.
Any deeper meanings? Anything you?
No, there was no deeper meanings there, except I wanted to go hunting or I wanted to go fishing. I didn't want to go to high school.
You didn't want to be in high school,
right?
Well, what was your favorite class in high school?
Oh, you know, I was band.
That's what I was going to guess. So talk about your band experience. You had some interesting stories about band. You love band.
That's when I started to grow up. Was band.
Why?
Because we would go after the games to the Village Inn Pizza, No, what's the name of that place? I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Village Inn. It was a pizza place, and then that's when I realized that I didn't want to be a Catholic priest. Also,
Now, I didn't know you wanted to be a Catholic priest.
yeah, I was an altar boy for a while.
So why did you want to be a priest? What was it about
Because
being a priest?
all the boys at that age because my mom was very religious, and we went to church, and then when you became an altar boy, you contemplated about being a priest, because that was a lot, it was.
Why?
Because you performed mass with the priest, and you thought that was pretty cool,
Pretty cool, yeah.
Right. And so then my high school, then I realized that there was girls out there, and they weren't too bad. So that was my start in high school. Was after the games we would go get pizza and we'd hang out, and then I'd come back. So, but I really enjoyed playing music.
When did you get your clarinet?
I started playing clarinet in grade school.
Wasn't it around the time you had your disease?
It was the year after. Probably started playing at 10.
Okay.
That was a major year. My first duck hunt, and
just 10 and 11, man.
Yeah. And
so in the world.
So we went, and I remember that my parents went. My mother was very protective of me.
Yeah.
And we had to go to the doctor to ask him if it was okay if I played the clarinet.
Okay.
Without hurting myself, Mm-hmm. And of course he looked at her funny and said, "Sure, it's okay if he plays the clarinet."
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so that's when I got my clarinet.
Why'd you pick clarinet?
Because that was the major choice: clarinets or trumpets.
Oh, okay. And what was the draw to the clarinet? Could you just play it better, or?
No, I didn't know it. I just didn't know anything about either one, and I pretty much was standing in the clarinet line.
Well, there you go.
There you go. It was just blind luck.
Fatal habit.
Sure. And so then we got the clarinet. And then I started playing in the band, and I started enjoying it.
Well, you played by ear a lot. You still do.
Yeah. Well, I play by ear. Yeah, you're right. But I did read music.
Yeah, of course you read music, but it seems like you learned a lot of songs by just listening to them and then playing them.
Well, that's true.
There was a lot of, I think of like the Tennessee Waltz.
Yes.
Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? All the ones that you like to still play, I feel like you have them all in your memory bank.
And my parents, the poor guys, they didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
We never went hungry because they always had extra food on the table, and all the neighbor kids were always eating at our place. We never went hungry, but we never had a lot of extra.
Yeah.
And so they paid $10 a month for I don't know how many years to buy my clarinet for me.
That's really sweet of them.
And so it just took off. It was a year's, lifetime's worth of enjoyment.
Well, and then you got a scholarship for it, didn't you?
Well, I was actually, I had gotten notified by a couple of universities to come try out. Mm-hmm. And I decided to go to work.
Why?
Because that was the thing to do. It was, you had to, you reached that age where you had to start supporting yourself. And so I was right out of high school. I was 18. And my brother, they had an opening at a land surveying business. And I got on with them.
Well, did your parents kind of push you away from college, didn't they?
They
wanted you to work?
My mother was worried that I was going to turn into a dope-smoking hippie, if I can quote her.
Happens.
No,
I'm just kidding. That's not true. But
and so yeah, and so they were worried about that. So then
why'd you listen?
Well, I listened because I had a job and I could earn money, and then I could buy my truck. Mm-hmm. And pay for my truck and become independent. So the money equals independence, but college wouldn't have done that for you? No, not really.
You would have been, who would you be dependent on? Your parents couldn't have paid for it. It was scholarships or nothing, right?
Yes, it was scholarships, or it was student loans.
Yeah.
And plus I got, so first off, when I told them I had this earth-shattering moment in my life. I was standing. I was pretty good at land surveying. I was really good at it. I was moving up. I was going to become a party chief. I ran an instrument and did the technical things right.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But I was standing on the edge of a swamp, probably in waist-deep water. And we didn't wear waders because it was too hot. And so we just wore tennis shoes, so you were soaking wet every day.
Oof, gross.
And that day I killed 12 or 13 poisonous snakes.
Oh yeah, I bet.
That were in front of me.
Cottonmouths and all that.
That I had to take care of. And being a hunter down there and everything like that, I knew how to deal with that.
Thank God.
I was eaten up by mosquitoes. And I said, there's got to be a better way to earn a living than this.
Yeah.
And so the light bulb went off. So I went home and I told my mom and my dad, I said, I'm going back to school. And my dad said, well, you're going to trade school, because my dad was a machinist.
Yeah, and so he went to trade school?
He went to trade school.
Okay.
So he says, you're going to trade school. You'll be a machinist, or,
Yeah.
blue collar guy. And I said, no. My mother said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to college. And she says, you're going to become one of those dope smokers. And little did they know that it seemed like there was enough of that going around at the survey police.
I'm sure of it.
So anyway, so I said, I'm going to college. And then so she got my oldest brother to come meet with me to try to talk me out of it.
No.
To say, you got a good job, you're moving up where you are. How can you just let that all go? And that's when I told him, I said, nobody's going to convince me any different.
Yeah, which is great, because think how different your life would have been if you wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
So
that's when I went to school, but I didn't go, I figured they still swayed me into away from the arts and away from
even though that was your passion, was your music.
The music. And so I went into industrial management technology. And so.
Are you happy with your choice?
Yes, I am.
Most days.
As time goes, it would have been different with the music. I'm sure that I probably would have loved that better.
Because I think about all the times you come home from work and you're just so bummed out.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, I raised a family. And I supported myself. I've been doing it for... Yeah,
you're great at your job.
In corrosion, I've been doing it for 32 years.
Good at your job. Yeah.
And so, I guess you can't really look back and regret.
No, you can't. No, I just think it's funny because I'm doing all that hippie shit. But it's funny because a lot of my work's hanging out with you. You know that.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you know that. Come on. No, but I'm doing that art stuff, that
right.
art thing.
Tell you, I really enjoyed English. And the more I got, not necessarily the nuts and bolts of writing stuff.
Well, you like poetry and you like reading it.
And I like reading, and I like looking at the real meaning behind things.
No, I think that, I think...
And so I really did enjoy that.
You're a creative person.
I almost became an English major.
I could have seen that.
Well,
you love poetry. I mean, you talk about Edgar Allan Poe all the time. And, Shakespeare. You like the traditional stuff.
Right. The Gothics.
Yeah. Yeah, you like the Gothic stuff. So, I mean, I think that, it's just how people's,
you got to chase your dreams to a certain extent, but you got to also be practical and pay for the bills.
Yeah.
Well,
you have to, but I think it's tricky.
Right.
Because for me, I'm not worried about it anymore. I don't know. I don't think about it much.
But you see, with us carving without cutting our arms off, and bleeding all over the place, this brings out a lot of these old discussions and stuff.
Yeah.
That we have, and these feelings, and find out that we're not that far apart.
No, I don't think so.
No,
pretty tight, and that's why we make stuff.
Right.
That's why we make stuff in the first place, right?
Sure. You make stuff because you can.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Heard a knock on the door.
There's a knock on the door. Is that a bear? Will we have to take care of him with these knives or what? I tell you what, I'll kill him, you skin him, and we'll eat him tomorrow. Okay?
Taxidermy. Oh, God. Oh, my goodness. So, it's funny, though. Your whole family was always creative. Isn't that weird? Like, your brother Oscar's paintings, and your dad was always carving. Did your mom do any art? Did she do any creative stuff?
My mother's art was her cooking. You know, she was extremely good cook. And so, and she took pride in her cooking. You know. And
all those Cajun recipes.
Right. I remember one time my dad, like I said, he was a machinist, and he was doing that's not the job that you can do with a heart trouble.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
Because it stressed him every day.
Yeah.
And back then, in those days, you didn't have the bypasses that you have now, or the stents and all that kind of stuff. Back then, they just gave you a bottle of nitroglycerin and told you to take it easy, which was a bottle of pills that you put it under your tongue.
Oh, God.
And it would open up your vessels temporarily.
Oof.
But it caused really severe headaches.
Oof.
So he would take 6 or 7 of those a day, which he was only supposed to take 1 a week.
Oh, my God.
You know.
Aww.
And so I remember him coming home from work one time, and my mother had fried pork chops. And we all had to sit at the table and eat together. You know. And he said, you know, I worked all day hard. And he says, I don't have gravy.
Oh, God.
He had to have gravy at every meal. And she called him an old bastard.
Good.
Threw the plate down, and she had him a mess of gravy within about 10 minutes.
Ah!
And it was probably the best gravy you could ever want to eat.
Oh, my God.
So he had to have gravy at every meal. God, I remember that.
And then what about your sister? I feel like, is she creative at all? Was she creative?
No.
Not as much. I feel like all the brothers, her and Aaron, I don't hear a lot about the paintings or drawings.
Aaron liked to write poetry a little bit.
He was a poetry guy.
Yes.
But I don't hear much about Eileen. She wasn't really part of the creative bunch.
No.
Of y'all.
No,
she was a wild woman.
Yeah, she could cook. She could cook pretty good. Eileen was a good cook. But Eileen never was creative. Now, Aaron, he never was really creative either. He was pretty much a go-to-work type of guy, you know.
Yeah, it's like you and Oscar had it, though.
But he was very generous. Aaron was very generous, a generous soul.
Well, that's that painting you did of him,
you know,
in the boat.
Right.
It was the stand-up boat, wasn't it? The
it was
kind
a
you were
pirogue,
talking about,
right.
the pirogue?
Yes. And but he enjoyed hunting and enjoyed the outdoors and fishing and stuff like that. But he enjoyed looking at stuff and maybe not doing it himself, but he had an appreciation for what went into it.
Yeah, totally.
You know.
Well, I was looking through your dad's carving box, and he had some art galleries showing buying his decoys and buying his paintings and stuff.
Right.
It was downtown. I mean, I don't know how big Metairie was, but I just thought that was
this was actually downtown New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
Where he went to. It was Adler's, I believe.
Yeah, yep, it was Adler's. Yeah, Adler's. I don't know what that is.
And so that was a jewelry store. And then every month or so, they would have all the local carvers go to Adler's, and they would sell their ware.
Oh, that's cool.
And so my dad they always enjoyed having him there because he had a gift for gab. My dad was always a storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
So you know where I get it from.
Yeah, you get it. It comes naturally, I think.
Right. And so my dad, they always put him in the front, or they put him by the location where all the people would have to go through the whole show to come see him.
Oh.
And
so he's a popular guy.
Yeah, so he would carve there. And unfortunately, at that time, I was not very much into carving.
Yeah, no, this seems like it was a late adaptation for you.
It was.
You never did this when I was a kid.
No, and what happened was I was going through some stuff in the garage, and I found some of his old decoy heads.
Yeah, the old cypress root ones.
Right, and so that's these guys right here.
Yeah.
This is what we're trying to carve, and
we're getting there.
You know.
It'll take some time.
Right. So these are
Yeah, they're nice.
I want to say 50 plus years old.
Mm-hmm.
They're made out of the cypress root. Just feel how light they
Yeah.
are. They're actually lighter than the Tupelo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
It's easier to carve.
No, I bet. Oh, yeah, I bet that goes a little faster.
Sure, but
it takes
they're
the
not
time.
as durable though. I mean, you could break a bill off real easy.
Real fast. Well, I know that with this guy, his little bill's partially broken.
Yeah, and
he was
actually,
an old Tupelo.
that was his decoy. That was a little wood duck, but he
Yeah.
didn't get a chance to finish it.
Oh, what's not done? His feathers, details, or?
Yeah, this was the prime coat.
Oh, yeah.
And so this was the prime coat, so he didn't get a chance to finish painting it.
Mm.
But he put the insert. This was a tail insert. This is made out of cypress, and you can feel how light it is.
It's super light. Yeah, it's super
It's
super
like
light.
a feather.
No, totally.
And the reason why they preferred that was, one, the ease of carving, but two, also, it was easier to carry in the woods.
Oh,
or
I
carry
bet.
in the field, in the marsh.
Do you remember any of your dad's best stories? You were saying he's a storyteller. What were his stories like?
Well, that was a story about burning the decoys. That was one of his favorites. He enjoyed that, telling
That was a good one?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the boucherie?
Oh, that was the one where...
That's a funny one.
See, my dad was kind of a... Believe it or not, he was a city boy.
Yeah.
He was from New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And my mother was from Bayou-Lafourche. And both of them wound up working at the same seafood restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Because her and her sister were kind of rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
And so they left the country. That's what they called it, the country.
Mm-hmm.
They left the country and went to New Orleans to earn their fortune.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they wound up working as waitresses at the seafood restaurant.
Okay.
And so my dad, this was in Bucktown, Louisiana.
Okay.
Okay. And so my dad was working there kind of as do everything type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he
Bus
would
boy,
fix things, bus
waiter.
boy, he would clean things, he'd fix and do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so the name of the place was La Rox.
La Rox.
La Rox, it was
Is
German.
it still there?
No, it was gone when I was a kid. They never could take me to it
Aw.
because it was already torn down or whatever.
Oh, man.
So anyway, so my dad met my mom at La Rox where she was working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they fell in love, and she was, I believe, 21,
Mm-hmm.
and he was 17.
Oh, he was a youngin'.
But in those days, you were a man at a young age, because my dad's mom had died when he
What was his mom's name?
14
How old was
or 13 or something like that.
How old was his mom when she died?
She was a young woman. And
was her name?
so
Do
my
you know
dad,
it?
huh?
Do you know her name?
Her name was Augusta.
And she was Swedish? Your
No,
dad
she
was
was
Swedish.
she was French.
She was French. Cajun French or French French?
She was French.
Okay.
And then my dad's dad was Swedish,
Yep.
right off the boat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so anyway, so he pretty much, my dad's dad, he was a dredge boat captain,
Mm-hmm.
so he was gone a lot.
Yeah.
So my dad had his sister, and he pretty much raised himself.
Oh, wow.
And so, like I said, he was smoking probably at 12 and
Mhm.
the whole thing. And so, anyway, he met my mom there, and they got together, and sure enough, old man LaRock, who my dad took care of,
Mm-hmm.
told him, "We'll give you a whole wedding."
Oh, wow.
And so they had now, the old priest didn't want to marry him
Mm-hmm.
because he was the difference in age, and the priest wouldn't marry him until my dad got his confirmation done.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got that done, which is a Catholic
Catholic
thing.
thing.
Right. And then, sure enough, they got married.
But then what? What about the boucherie?
So, anyway, so my mom took my dad to the country.
Mm-hmm.
Because she told her mom, she says, the next time I come home, I'll be a married woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so they took him to the country to introduce him and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
So they were having a boucherie, which is they were going to harvest a pig.
Mm-hmm.
So this pig was a special pig. He wasn't Wilbur, but he was a special pig. And they would take this hog, and they put him in. He lived on a platform off the ground,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they would feed him nothing but corn and fatten him up, and wash him down every day. And so he was pretty much like one of those Japanese
Cows, the Kobe beef.
The Kobe beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had a special life. Okay. Well, that morning when it come time to the morning of the boucherie, which they always planned it on a cold day, so the pig started squealing because he knew this was it. You know? And so they took the pig and they got him out the pen, and they gave my dad the pan to hold underneath the pig,
yeah,
the pig's neck.
Uh-huh.
So what they did was they shaved the pig's neck.
Oof.
Okay, and they took a knife much like yours. It was a long straight knife, and they cut the pig's artery.
Oh God. Ugh.
And so the pig's blood would
handle that.
squirt out every time his heart would beat.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was holding the pan, and he was watching this, and he was a city boy.
Yeah.
And he looked up, and his eyes turned back in his head, and my mom's dad, who was French, spoke to him in French and said, "Beulah, get the pan." Because they didn't want to lose the blood, because they used the blood to make sausage.
And sausage.
It was blood sausage called boudin.
Okay.
Okay, so my dad was getting ready to pass out watching the blood come from the pig's neck.
Oh.
That was another story he told. He said that poor pig, he says every time his heart would beat, he said that blood would shoot out.
Oh. Oh my goodness.
And then they would take and they would work on that pig all day, and they would fry crackling, which was
The pig skin, right?
the skin, which was like pork rings.
Pork rind, yeah.
Okay, and they would have little pieces of fried crackling, and you would fry it crisp, and you'd take the skin and you'd take your pocket knife, because everybody walked around with a pocket knife, and you'd cut it and you'd eat it off of the skin.
Oh wow.
It was always seasoned a little bit.
Interesting.
And then they had pork for the year.
Oh wow.
You know.
Yeah.
They would take all of the fat and boil it down and render it, and then save that and cook with it.
Oh, that'd be like their.
That was their oil.
Oh, okay.
That was the Crisco that they
Yeah, I
used.
was gonna say Crisco. I couldn't think of the
Right,
word.
sure.
The lard.
Right. But everybody there, I guess that's why they all had heart trouble. But although they worked hard every day, and so they didn't die that young, you know. Although some of them did, but still. But that was his story about going to the country, and it was always funny because I think the brother-in-laws were all in kinship, okay, because they were not country. And
Okay.
it was my dad married my mom, Beulah,
Yep, Beulah.
and then my uncle Wagner, who was one of my favorite uncles.
Okay.
He married Vesta, which was one of the girls.
One of your mom's sisters?
Mom's sister.
Okay.
My uncle Ted, who was from Minnesota,
Okay.
he was down there working on the bridge that was being
Wait.
installed.
Oh, and he's your brother, your dad's brother, right?
No, Uncle Ted was married Henrietta, which was one of my other.
But then how was he related? The Minnesotan guy.
He was just one of the uncles, married to one of the sisters.
Oh, okay. But they were all friends.
Right, they were all friends
Okay, they
and
were
they
all
hung out
buddies.
together.
I get it.
So they were telling another story that my dad liked to tell was, my Uncle Wagner was driving. They were all in the car and they all had been drinking. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember this one.
Okay, so they've all been drinking, and they're going down the country road trying to get back to the house in the country. Okay, and all of a sudden a bull stepped out in front of them in the car.
Okay.
He hit the bull and slammed on the brakes with the car and hit the bull, and the car turned over.
Oh.
And Aunt Henrietta's legs wound up around my dad's face.
How does that happened?
That's the way it wound up with. My Uncle Ted was looking out the back window at the moon saying,
my God.
look, it's a full moon tonight. It was like a comedy of things.
Oh my God.
The bull stood up and blew once or twice and walked off, so the bull was okay.
The bull was...
So they all climbed out of the car, and the guys, everybody grabbed hold of the car, and they straightened it out, and they drove home.
Sounds like a country evening.
It was a country evening.
Oh my God. That's funny. What other stories you want to tell?
Then they had the time that they were going home, and the crawfish were crossing the road.
How does that work? All the crawfish?
Yeah, what happens is down there sometimes when it rains a lot, you get a lot of rain, the crawfish need to migrate for some reason.
Yeah.
And so they were crossing the road.
Oh God.
In front of them, just
did they just scoop them up and eat them?
And so what they did
Take
was
them home.
they had a couple of pairs of pants. And so they tied the bottom of the pants and they filled them full of crawfish.
Oh my God.
And everything they could find, and then they brought them home and boiled them and had a crawfish boil.
Oh my God. That's funny. That's a funny story.
I think David remembers the crawfish crossing your brother.
Yeah.
Because they did in Slidell.
Yeah, I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about Louisiana, really.
Right.
Other than the stories I know. No, I've been in Michigan all my life. Well, Dad, what do you think? Anything else we should talk about?
Well, my dad, he worked on the dredge boat, and they always wanted to find Jean Lafitte's treasure.
Okay, who's that?
Jean Lafitte was a pirate down in Barataria, Louisiana. A very well-known pirate. And supposedly, before they ran him out, he helped save New Orleans from the British during the War of 1812.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And so, just so happens that somebody in his group burned a ship or something, and so they were running him out of town. So right before he ran out of town, supposedly he buried his treasure someplace in Barataria. Okay? Pirate's treasure.
So your dad always was looking for that?
So my grandfather, the Swede,
Oscar, right?
Oscar, who was the dredge boat captain, they would be dredging 24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Digging canals to put gas pipelines down.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And so, with the search beam in front of him, where they were digging, he saw something square floating out in the middle of the marsh. So he called, he took everybody off the deck, and they tied a rope on my dad, and he says...
How old was your dad?
Huh?
How old was your dad at this point?
Like 20.
20, okay.
20 or 21. He tied a rope on him, said, and it was because it was nothing but mud and slush.
Ooh.
And he says, take this hatchet out there. And he says, if it's a box, don't tell anybody. Because they thought it was Lafitte's.
They thought it was the treasure.
Lafitte's treasure.
Oh my gosh.
So he didn't want to have to share it with everybody, I think.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's a little selfish Swedish.
Yes. So he says, if it's a box, don't tell everybody. He says, we'll tie something to it and we'll come back and get it. And so my dad swam out there, and this is in the middle of the night.
Oh my God.
And I waded through the mud to get to it, took the hatchet and hit it, and it was nothing but a log.
Oh. Aw. Silly dad.
So, they were always looking for Lafitte's treasure.
That's funny.
Then one time they came across a graveyard.
Okay.
In the middle of the swamp. And some of the caskets had floated up.
Oof.
Okay.
Oh, no.
And so this was in the middle of nowhere, ungodly swamp.
Yeah.
Okay. It could have been, see, the way things happen down there is sometimes the water will come up and go down, and then maybe you might have a place to live.
For a while.
For a while, and then all of a sudden it's just
gone.
reclaimed. Okay. And one of the crew members went in and got the gold teeth.
Oh God, that's awful.
And so my grandfather found out about that.
Oh, that's awful.
And he told him, he says, we have to go back to that cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, where did you get this tooth? And they put it back in each grave.
Oh, wow.
And then he went back and put the guy in the bilge to clean the bilge out of the boat for the rest of the month.
Good.
As a punishment.
Because, yeah, that's one
Grave
taboo
robbers.
over all of societies everywhere is that you don't mess with the dead, you know?
You know,
Such a
and
disrespect.
so they put each one of the teeth back to where he found them.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Well, that's good.
and so they were put back.
Mm.
Now, when I was a land surveyor,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my story, you know, I was in a ungodly swamp in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and this was with the Spanish moss hanging down,
Mm-hmm.
the big oak trees around it, and we come across a cemetery.
Oof.
And this was in the middle of nowhere, and it was dark, a cloudy day. It was just perfect for, you know, the vampire, one of the guys come get us. And so the guys were messing around, and they found a pair of rosary beads. And one of the guys took it.
No, you didn't do that.
And I said, man, you don't do this. This is wrong.
Totally.
You know, you don't disturb the grave.
No.
And so everybody, they were all laughing and joking, and I was really kind of stand back about it stuff. And I looked at one of the headstones, and on the headstones it said, I once was as you are, but soon you will be as I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What-
Memento mori.
Right. And I read that out loud, and the words didn't get out of my mouth, and all of a sudden, it changed. The
And they all-
atmosphere changed.
They all put it back.
Yes.
Ah!
I once was as you are, but soon you'll be as I am. And I remember reading that. It was like the words, I was reading it slowly because I was trying to see it on the headstone. And it
Ugh,
went, oh my God.
that's crazy. Oh man.
But you'd wonder, because we were surveying and we would find things back in the swamp, and we can barely stand up. You said, how did they get this? What they would mark property boundaries with was big pieces of sugarcane factory steel, and they called them grate bars. And it was a piece of steel that was like that big around, and they shoved it, and it was like 12 foot long. How did they get that back in that swamp to put it?
It wasn't a swamp
And
before.
they put it down as a property corner.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you know, you would find a grate bar, and that was the right state. That was, you always, when you found a grate bar, that was the correct point to start or stop from.
Huh.
That was always
Weird.
good property line.
Oh man.
So that's some of the stories we had.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm getting hungry. I don't know about you.
Hey, that sounds good. We'll go get something to eat.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks, Dad.
All right, hon.
Thanks, Dad. Don't get this on Mom's floor.